Monster Hunter World Iceborne is a wonderful gaming experience with a whole host of content that Capcom has supported over the past few years, but now we have access to all the game has to offer and we can work towards the best builds possible in the game. So I'm Darcblade with the best of the best builds for the Heavy Bowgun in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now when I say a best of the best build, I mean a build that is constructed from some of the rarest armor, weaponry and jewels in the game. This gives hunters some of the strongest sets possible. For this series I'll be featuring 4 builds for each of the various weapons, which should cater to a variety of playstyles. Now when it comes to both the heavy and light bowgun, your builds are normally dictated by what ammo you want to specialise in. This can create a number of builds. Unfortunately, when it comes to the best of the best builds possible, there won't be much variety in armor unfortunately, but there will be differences when it comes to the jewels and especially the weapons for each of the builds in this video. So the first build is the best of the best artillery heavy bowgun build. This build focuses on sticky ammo above all other ammo types, and as sticky ammo is all about dealing fixed damage and we don't have to worry about affinity, it gives us a lot of room for quality of life and defensive skills. So for this build you'll need the Dragon Head Beta, the Dragon Hide Beta, Brachydian Braces Alpha, Dragon Barbs Beta and the Dragon Feet Beta. I'm also using a Challenger Charm 5 and for my weapon I'm using the Rajang Destroyer. The main reason I'm using this weapon is because it has the sticky free auto reload function. So after every shot it will automatically reload, thus it frees up a lot of custom mods and means that we don't have to worry about skills such as the ammo up skill. It also has an attack increase augmentation and then an augmentation of your choice, to which I've gone for a defense increase augmentation. And then as for your specialist tools, these are down to personal preference, so I've gone for temporal and rocksteady mantles. So when it comes to the jewels, you've got a lot to play around with. First of all, I've gone for artillery jewels for the artillery skill. I've then gone for iron war jewels for the guard skill, attack jewels for the attack boost skill, jumping jewel for evade extender, a shield jewel for the guard up skill, KO jewels for the slugger skill, and protection jewels for divine blessing. As for the jewels on the mantles, I've gone for true shot jewels for the special ammo boost skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have a build with 200 health and 200 stamina, regardless of if you've taken consumables or not. You have a raw attack of 564 with 0% affinity. As I said though, we don't have to worry about affinity with this build as we are focusing on sticky ammunition which cannot crit. You also have high deviation, and when it comes to the custom mods, as the main ammo we are using, Sticky Freeze, is an auto reload ammunition type for this weapon, it means that we can go for defensive custom mod. So I've gone for 4 shield mods and then a power barrel to increase our knockout capabilities. You'll also have the Wyvern Heart special ammo, and you'll have a very strong defense of 1126 that is strong against water and thunder, a little bit weak to fire and ice, and unfortunately very weak to the dragon element. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you have attack boost at level 7. This is a skill that increases the raw attack of a build as well as gives us bonus 5% affinity when we get it to level 4 or above. This will ultimately increase the damage of our sticky ammunition. You have Agitator at level 7, which is a buff that kicks in whenever a monster becomes enraged. When this happens, it grants us bonus raw attack, increasing the damage of our sticky ammo again, as well as bonus base affinity. And as you can easily control, when a monster becomes enraged in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, thanks to the whole flint shot mechanic, this buff should be active for the majority of a hunt. Next up is Slugger at level 5. Slugger is a skill that allows us to knock out monsters more easily, and as the explosion from sticky ammo has a natural knockout effect, it means that we should be KO'd a monster quite a lot during a hunt. You also have Artillery at level 5, increasing the damage of sticky ammo. You also have Guard at level 5, increasing our block capabilities, so it reduces the knockback when we guard against a monster, and it also reduces the stamina cost for blocking that said attack as well. You also have Divine Blessing at level 5, which reduces the damage we take should we actually take a hit from a monster. You have Stun Resistance at level 3, nullifying all stun effects on this build. You have Evade Extender level 3, which is a quality of life skill for the heavy bowgun. This increases the distance at which we can roll and dodge. It's also a useful way to maneuver yourself with the heavy bowgun as it counters the slow movement speed slightly. You have Critical Eye level 2, a byproduct of the armor we're wearing, but it gives us base affinity. You have Evade Window at level 2, another byproduct of the armor, but gives us slightly increased invincibility frames when we perform dodges and evades. You have Weakness Exploit at level 1, another byproduct of the armor, that gives us increased affinity should we be attacking monster weak points. And should these weak points be tenderized through Clutch Claw attacks, this increase to our affinity is even greater. You also have Guard Up at level 1, which allows us to block unblockable attacks. And then finally, when you're wearing your mantles, you'll have Special Ammo Boost, which increases the damage of the Wyvern Heart or Wyvern Snipe shots with the heavy bowguns. Finally, for the set bonus, you have the Fatalis Legend. For wearing 2 pieces of the Fatalis armor, you'll get the Inheritance set bonus. This is a skill that allows us to break and increase the level cap on certain skills. With this build, it allows us to get the Agitator skill from level 5 to level 7. It also allows us to get the Slugger skill from level 3 to level 5, the Artillery skill from level 3 to level 5, and finally Divine Blessing from level 3, again to level 5. And finally, for wearing 4 pieces of the Fatalis armor, you'll have the Transcendence set bonus. Transcendence provides hunters with 2 buffs really. Firstly, it gives you 200 health and 200 stamina, regardless of if you've taken consumables or not. This also persists through death. And on top of that, it will also grant us the True Spare Shot skill, which greatly increases the chance of not consuming a bullet when we actually fire the weapon. So there you have it. As you can see, it's a strong all-round build, having offensive, defensive and quality of life options. Obviously your main ammunition type, like I mentioned, is Sticky Freeze. But a word of warning, you have to be careful. As the ammo type is an auto reload, as soon as you fire the bullet, your hunter will go into the reload animation, and whilst it's very quick with the auto reload ammunition types, it can sometimes leave you open, so time your shots well. But thanks to focusing on an auto reload ammunition type, it frees up so many skills in this build so we can increase our defense, offense and quality of life. But every build out there has pros and cons. The biggest pro for this build is its strong damage output. Focusing on sticky ammunition, you're able to deal fixed damage to a monster, so you don't have to worry about their resistances. It also means that you don't have to worry about affinity at all with this build. Which brings us on to the next pro, which is the defensive and quality of life options this build has. From having 4 shield mods, maxed out guard, guard up and more, it all allows us to survive the most difficult hunts in the game. And then finally, for the pros is the Fatalis Legend set bonus, which provides us a ton of bonuses increasing our defense, offense and quality of life. On top of that, the True Razor Sharp skill will mean that we don't have to go back to camp as often to restock our ammunition. But unfortunately there are cons to this build. One of the biggest cons, much like every bowgun out there, is that unfortunately there will be times where you run out of ammunition and you'll have to go back to camp or switch to a different ammo type, which won't be optimal for this build. And the other con is, unfortunately, again, much like all the builds that have the Fatalis armor, it's a jewel heavy build, requiring some of the rarest jewels in the game to make work. But if you have a large jewel collection and want a heavy bowgun build that can be used against pretty much any monster in the game, I strongly recommend this one. Which brings us on to the next build, which is the best of the best spread or piercing shot heavy bowgun build. Now this is a universal DPS build that can make use of spread freeze or pierce free ammunition types. As I featured a pierce build in the light bowgun video, I'll be demonstrating a spread ammunition build for the heavy bowgun. But regardless of what type of ammo you are using, this again is a DPS build aimed to specialise in those ammunition types. So for this build you'll need the Brachydium Helm Alpha, the Dragon Hide Beta, Dragon Claws Beta, Dragon Barbs Alpha, Dragon Feet Beta and the Challenger Charm 5. I'm also using the Vor Buster, which has a health regen augmentation and then attack up augmentation. To be honest, we could drop the health regen augmentation, as when using spread ammunition the health regen augmentation is not that beneficial. And for my specialist tools, I've gone for the Temporal and Rocksteady Mantles. So when it comes to the jewels, you've got a ton to play around with. Firstly, I've gone for Challenger Jewels to max out the Agitator skill. I've then gone for Protection Jewels for Divine Blessing, a Mind's Eye Jewel for the Ballistic skill, a Shield Jewel for Guard Up, Expert Jewels for Critical Eye, Iron War Jewels for the Guard skill, Attack Jewels for the Attack Boost skill, Spread Jewels for the Spread Shot skill. Of course, if you were using the Piercing ammunition, you would replace the Spread Jewels for Piercing Jewels, which would give you the Piercing Shot skill instead. And then finally I've gone for Critical Jewels for the Crit Boost skill. As for the jewels on the mantles, again I've gone for True Shot Jewels for the Special Ammo Boost skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you have a build with 200 health and 200 stamina, regardless of if you've taken consumables or not. You have a raw attack of 572 with 25% base affinity. This affinity rating can easily be 85% when you take into account both weakness exploit and the buff from Agitator. Unfortunately you have high deviation. Now when it comes to the custom mods, when you're using spread freeze you need at least 2 recoil suppressors. Whilst if you're using piercing ammo, you'll need a recoil suppressor and a reload assist. Afterwards I've just simply gone for free shield mods to allow us to block monster attacks, and you'll have the Wyvern Snipe special ammo. You also have a strong defense of 1111, that's again strong against water and thunder, a little bit weak to fire and ice, but unfortunately very weak to dragon. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you have attack boost at level 7, you have critical eye at level 7, greatly increasing the base affinity of this build, definitely useful for countering the negative affinity found on the Fatalis weaponry. You have Agitator at level 7, Guard at level 5, Divine Blessing at level 5, Weakness Exploit at level 3. Weakness Exploit, like I said, increases our affinity when we're attacking monster weak points. And should these weak points be tenderized through Clutch Claw attacks first, this increase to our affinity is even greater. Weakness Exploit at level 3 can potentially provide us a bonus 50% extra affinity. When it comes to Weakness Exploit on this build, we actually have gone over level 3. We're actually at level 4 thanks to the actual armor we're wearing, but the reason I've kept it the way it is all thanks to the Dragon Barb's alpha. I'm sure if this bugged you too much, you could swap out certain pieces of armor here and there. For example, the Brachydium helm could be potentially replaced, but as always, the choice is up to you. Nonetheless, this is what I like to use. Anyway, you have Critical Boost at level 3. Critical Boost is a skill that increases the damage of our attacks should they crit a monster. However, this increase in damage only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental or element portion. Anyway, you have Spread Shots level 2, increasing the damage of spread ammunition. You have Evade Window at level 2. You have Fortify at level 1, which is a useful skill for difficult hunts in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Whenever we faint and come back, we'll come back with increased raw attack and defense. This buff can be applied twice to a hunter during any one hunt. Ballistics at level 1. Ballistics is a skill that gives us increased ranged capabilities when it comes to the critical distance found on the heavy bowguns. Basically, when it comes to spread ammunition, it means that we can be further away from a monster and still deal maximum damage, and the same applies for piercing ammunition. Anyway, you have Guard Up at level 1, and then finally when you're wearing your mantles, you have Special Ammo Boost. As for the set bonus, once again you'll have the Fatalis Legend, which gives us Inheritance and Transcendence, which we talked about in the first build. So there we have it, that is the best of the best spread or piercing heavy bowgun build. As you can see, it is a straightforward DPS build making use of either of those ammunition types. It also has a few defensive skills, especially when it comes to being able to block monster attacks. Definitely useful when you're using spread ammunition, as you do have to get close to monsters. But of course, as always, every build has pros and cons. When it comes to the pros for this build, one of its biggest pros is its damage output, able to dish out a large amount of damage to a monster, regardless of their elemental resistances. This build has high raw attack, so we don't have to really worry about elements or ailments, which allows you to deal effective damage to a monster. On top of that, once again, this build has quite a few defensive options. Having the shield custom mods, guard skill and guard up, it means that we're able to block the majority of monster attacks and then follow them up with attacks of our own. And then finally, again for the pros, is the Fatalis Legend set bonus, giving us increased defense, quality of life and offense. But unfortunately, there are cons to every build. The biggest cons for this build include the fact that when it comes to the spread ammunition, you're going to have to get close to a monster to deal damage. This can potentially put you at risk. Alternatively, if you're using piercing ammunition, you'll have the issue of the ammunition type being less effective against smaller monsters that have fewer hit zones. And the other con for this build is, unfortunately, once again, it's a dual heavy build, requiring some of the rarest jewels in the game to make work. But if you like to use the spread ammunition or piercing shots, this is a build I'd strongly recommend. It's fun, effective, and allows you to deal a decent amount of damage without having to rely on sticky ammunition. A quick note as well, if you wanted to increase your damage even more with this build, you can use the Special Scope mod if you so desire, but I personally find it disorienting, so I normally choose not to use it. Which brings us on to our third build, which is normally a quirky and niche build, which in the case of the Heavy Bowgun is the best of the best FROSTCRAFT Heavy Bowgun build. Now this is a very meme build in some respects. It's basically spamming the Clutch Claw attack over and over again and combining it with the FROSTCRAFT bonus, which allows us to deal large amounts of burst damage. So we're not worrying about ammunition whatsoever on this build. It's a case of just using your Clutch Claw, performing the Clutch Claw attack, hitting the monster very hard, normally over 900, sometimes over 1000 per Clutch Claw attack, sheathing your weapon, recharging the FROSTCRAFT set bonus, rinse and repeat. So, for this build you'll need the Rimeguard Helm Gamma, the Rimeguard Mel Gamma, the Rimeguard Vambraces Gamma, Dragon Barb's Beta, and the Rimeguard Greaves Gamma. I'm also using a Challenger Charm 5, and for my weapon again I'm using the Vorbuster, which is the Fatalis Heavy Bowgun. This has an attack increase augmentation and then health regen augmentation. As for the specialist tools, as we will be attaching ourselves to a monster quite often via the Clutch Claw, I've gone for Temporal and Rocksteady Mantles. So when it comes to the jewels, you've got a fair few to play around with, so I've gone for attack jewels for the attack boost skill, critical jewels for critical boost, vitality jewels for the health boost skill, and then the remaining jewels are kinda personal preference. I've gone for a sheath jewel to max out quick sheath, a hard enduring jewel for the item prolonger skill, expert jewels for a little bit of critical eye, further jewels to max out the resentment skill, and maintenance jewels for the tool specialist skills. As for the jewels on the mantles, I've gone for protection jewels for divine blessing. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have a build with 150 health, 100 stamina, which will be 200 health and 150 stamina when you're on a hunt and taking all your relevant consumables. You have a raw attack of 572, which can be higher when peak performance is active on a hunt. You have 0% affinity, but our attack should always be critting thanks to critical draw. You have high deviation, which we don't have to worry about, and for the custom mods I've simply gone for close range up mods and then a mod of your choice, to which I've gone for a power barrel. You'll also have the Wyvern Snipe special ammo, and you have a strong defense of 1121 that is strong against water and ice, but unfortunately weak to the other elements. So when it comes to the skills, first of all, you have attack boost at level 7, you have ice attack at level 6. Unfortunately, ice attack is a byproduct of the armor we're wearing. There's no way to avoid having it on this build. It's not really used on this build either. If we were using an ice weapon, it would increase the ice rating and thus ice damage, but like I said, it's a wasted skill on this build, unfortunately. Anyway, you have Agitator at level 5, Resentment at level 5. Resentment is a skill that increases our raw attack when there is a portion of red health on our health bar. Now the reason I've taken this is because I wanted to increase our raw attack as much as possible, thus increasing the damage of our clutch claw attack. Resentment I've taken to counter peak performance, which we'll talk about in a moment. Anyway, you have health boost at level 3, allowing our health to get to that maximum of 200. You have a recovery up at level 3, a byproduct of the armor, but is still useful. It's a quality of life skill that increases the effectiveness of healing methods, so when we drink a potion it will heal us for more. You have critical eye at level 3, critical boost at level 3, critical draw at level 3. Critical draw is a skill that gives our drawing attacks increased affinity. Critical draw at level 3 gives us 100% increased affinity on draw attacks. And should you use your clutch claw whilst your weapon is sheathed, technically the clutch claw attack you perform afterwards counts as a drawing attack. So it means our main attack with this build should always be critting. Anyway, you have peak performance at level 3, which is a skill that gives us increased raw attack so long as we have full health. So as you can see, resentment and peak performance are kind of opposites of one another. Regardless of which is active, it means that we should have increased raw attack. Peak performance at times can be difficult to maintain, especially as we are putting ourselves at risk by clutch clawing to a monster all the time. So having resentment as a backup for when peak performance is lost is the main reason why I've taken the resentment skill. Anyway, you have quick sheath level 3, which allows us to sheath our weapon very quickly. You have item prolonger at level 3, which is a quality of life skill, a result of the hard enduring jewel we're using on this build, which allows items and buffs to remain active for longer periods. You have tool specialist at level 3, reducing the cooldown on our specialist tools so we can use our mantles more quickly. You have coalescence level 3, a byproduct of the armor we're using again, which is a skill that when we remove a blight or status effect from our hunter, it will grant us increased raw attack, elemental attack and ailment attack. This ultimately allows our clutch claw attacks to deal more damage once it's applied to our hunter. You also have resuscitate at level 1, again another byproduct. Resuscitate is a skill that when we have a blight on our hunter, it gives us increased evasion capabilities and reduced stamina depletion. And then finally, when you're wearing your mantles, you have divine blessing. As for the set bonus, you only have one of them, which is the Velkhana divinity. This grants us 2 bonuses. First of all, for wearing 2 pieces of the Velkhana armor, we'll get critical element. This is pretty much like critical boost, but applies to the elemental portion of an attack, not the raw portion. But this set bonus is kind of wasted on this build as we are not using elemental attacks. But the more important set bonus is FROSTCRAFT. This is a bonus we get for wearing 4 pieces of the Velkhana armor. FROSTCRAFT basically gives us a secondary gauge underneath our stamina bar. As this fills up, the more full it is, it will grant us increased attack, allowing us to deal more damage. But with each shot we fire, or attack we perform, this gauge will slowly deplete, and it can only be replenished when we actually sheath our weapon. But the attack rotations we're using with this build, the maximum FROSTCRAFT bonus should be applied to all our attacks. So there you have it. As you can see, it's a heck of a meme build, but it is effective nonetheless. As long as you're performing the rotation of clutch clawing onto a monster whilst your weapon is sheathed, performing a clutch claw attack, sheathing your weapon after you've performed that said attack, rinse and repeat, you should be dealing efficient damage to a monster. But of course this build has obvious pros and cons. The biggest pro for this build is its damage output. It has very high raw attack, and its clutch claw attacks deal a lot of damage to a monster regardless of their elemental or ailment resistances. The next pro is the FROSTCRAFT set bonus, which gives us a very unique way of playing the Heavy Bowgun. And the final pro is that this build does not have to worry about ammunition whatsoever. But there are obvious cons. The biggest con for this build is that unfortunately it's a very niche build, and it may not be the most effective build for the Heavy Bowgun, which leads us on to the second con, which unfortunately there will be times, especially when you're going up against fast and aggressive monsters, where you'll be knocked off of the monster quite often. The specialist tools such as the Temporal Mantle and Rocksteady Mantle or Element Ammunition types can help counter this slightly, but it's something you're going to have to be aware of. Nonetheless, if you're looking for a unique way to play the Heavy Bowgun, something that's a little bit different, I'd strongly recommend this build. It definitely makes the weapon feel fresh, and it's actually quite amusing to play. One thing to be aware of though, if you are using a different weapon, say you don't have access to the Fatalis Heavy Bowgun, whatever weapon you replace with it, make sure it has the Wyvern Snipe special ammunition or this build will not work. Which brings us on to the fourth and final build, which is the best of best Guiding Lands Heavy Bowgun build. Now when it comes to the Guided Lands, the first build and second build featured in this video can be adapted to be used in the Guiding Lands. So it all comes down to what ammunition type you like to use in said Guiding Lands, whether it be spread, pierce or sticky ammunition. All those builds can be adapted by simply changing a few of the jewels around. For the purpose of this video, I'll be demonstrating an augmented artillery build that I use in the Guiding Lands, as sticky ammunition is very efficient when it comes to farming. So for this build you'll need the Dragon Head Beta, Dragon Hide Beta, Brachydian Braces Alpha, Dragon Barbs Beta and Dragon Feet Beta. I'm also using a Challenger Charm 5, and for my weapon again I'm using the Rajang Destroyer, which has an attack increase augmentation and then an augmentation of your choice. As for the mantles, I've gone for a Rocksteady Mantle, and this time I've gone for an Impact Mantle to increase our knockout capabilities. So when it comes to the jewels, first of all you must take Destroyer jewels for the Part Breaker skill. I've then gone for Protection jewels, the Divine Blessing. You then have to take a Hard Geology jewel for the Geologist skill, Artillery jewels to max out the Artillery skill, KO jewels for some points in the Slugger skill, a Shield jewel for Guard Up, Attack jewels to max out the Attack boost, and then Iron War jewels to max out the Guard skill. As for the jewels on the mantles, I've gone for KO jewels on the Impact Mantle so we max out the Slugger skill, and Maintenance jewels on the Rocksteady Mantle. So if you've done what I've done here, you have a build with 200 health and 200 stamina, regardless of if you've taken consumables or not. You have a raw attack of 564 with 0% affinity. You have high deviation. For the custom mods, much like the first build, I've gone for 4 shield mods and then a power barrel, and you'll have the Wyvern Heart special ammunition. As for your defense, you have a strong defense of 1126 that is strong against water and thunder, slightly weak to fire and ice, but unfortunately very weak to the dragon element. Now when it comes to the skills, first of all you have attack boost at level 7, you'll then have agitator at level 7, artillery at level 5, guard at level 5, Divine Blessing at level 5, Stun Resistance at level 3, Part Breaker at level 3. Part Breaker is one of the essential Guiding Lands skills that allows us to break monster body parts more easily, but when applied to the Guiding Lands, it allows us to break off monster materials that you farm from the monsters more easily, ultimately leading to more loot. You also have Slugger level 3, which can be potentially level 5 when wearing the Impact Mantle. You have Geologist at level 3, another essential Guiding Lands skill. Geologist you really only need at level 1, but as the dual sockets allow, you may as well get it to level 3. Geologist is a skill that allows us to loot the monster materials that we break from them twice instead of once, at least from the high tier monsters. On top of that, having Geologist at level 3 allows us to farm and mine the bone piles and mining nodes in the Guiding Lands additional times, leading to more loot. You also have Critical Eye at level 2, Evade Window at level 2, Weakness Exploit at level 1, Guard Up at level 1, and then finally you'll have Tool Specialist at level 2. Again, when it comes to the set bonus, you'll have the Fatalis Legend, Inheritance and Transcendence. So as you can see, this is very similar to the first build featured in this video, but it's been changed slightly here and there to allow us to farm the Guiding Lands. But even this build has pros and cons. Much like the first build, its biggest pro is its fixed damage output, able to deal fixed damage to a monster regardless of their resistances or even where your shot lands on a monster. This build also has all the essential Guiding Lands skills. From Part Breaker and Geologist, it allows you to come away from the endgame area with maximum loot. It would have been nice to have Fortify on this build as well, but we were slightly limited with our dual sockets. And then finally for the pros, again, is the Fatalis Legend, providing us bonuses to our defense, offense and quality of life. But unfortunately there are cons. Much like the first build, one of your biggest cons is that unfortunately there may be times where you have to go back to camp to resupply your ammunition, and the other con is again, this is a jewel heavy build, requiring some of the rarest jewels in the game to make work. But if you're looking for a build to take on the Guiding Lands, a build that can be used against any monster, I'll strongly recommend this one. Of course, like I said, if you prefer pierce or spread ammunition, you can also slightly change the second build found in this video, so it has Part Breaker and Geologist, and again you'll have an effective build for farming the Guiding Lands. The choice as always is up to you. So there we have it, those are the best builds for the Heavy Bowgun. Now these builds aim to be strong general builds, able to take on pretty much any task in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, but if you wanted to take on specific monsters, tougher monsters, such as Elatrion or Fatalis, then some adjustments may be needed here and there. These builds are also slightly different from other meta builds found in the community, but regardless, these are the strongest builds that I personally like to use, and I hope they help you out in your hunts. So until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you the best of the best builds for the Heavy Bowgun in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.